Starting off at number 10, we have Forget-Me-Not. I wanted to start this list off really small, with a character y'all may not know. Mainly because almost no one knows him because that's his power. Appearing in 2014, Forget-Me-Not had actually been a member of the X-Men for several years before this, but thanks to his abilities, no one can remember him. Forget-Me-Not's abilities make it so that he is imperceptible in all forms, basically. The power is so good that even Charles Xavier himself had to place a psychic reminder on himself so that he would remember Forget-Me-Not's existence. Clearly, that means some of the most powerful telepaths have difficulty discovering him, let alone remembering him. His power is to be forgotten, but the unique ways this power could be used, and the uniqueness of this power in general, will keep him in my mind. Number 9, we got Eye-Boy. Why is a guy named Eye-Boy on a list of strongest members of the X-Men? I see you, like many of the other mutants, are very judgmental. Trevor Hawkins' body is covered in eyes, 57 to be exact, which give him an array of powers that honestly, you kinda may expect. Microscopic, telescopic, X-ray, night, infrared, and thermal vision are all a part of his power list. But he can also detect chemicals, is an excellent marksman, and is skilled in nonverbal communication. He can almost read other people's minds by reading their behaviors and body language. He is an incredible tracker. He can predict attacks and can read people's histories just by looking at them. He can pinpoint weak spots in machines and people, is able to see electronic wavelengths and microwaves, is able to see past illusions and disguises as well as magic waves. He makes an amazing detective, in short. On top of all that, he can even pass what he sees onto others, but he has to be physically close enough for it to work. But to top it all off, the craziest and most unexpected power he possesses recently is solar blasts. We don't know how just yet, but Trevor can emit intense bursts of bright yellow energy and focused beams of extrastellar force that cause sunburns and radiation poisoning. Coming in at number 8, it's Gwenpool. I think Gwenpool has one of the strangest powers. That would be the power of medium interaction, which is because she comes from a reality very much like ours, as in superheroes are fictional people in comic books. So, when Gwen was transported to a pocket universe that recreated her home reality, Gwen's perception of the fictional world allowed her to gain the ability to recognize and manipulate the artistic medium that she was now in. She can see and physically interact with lettering and caption boxes, and touch and even break through panel gutters, allowing her to transport objects short distances through space and time by moving them across panels, and she interacts with different instances of herself from multiple panels on the same page. Now, I don't know if you've realized this, but this kind of means Gwendolyn Poole can kind of warp reality in a way. She kind of becomes one of the most crazily powerful characters in comics, at least potentially. She first showed up in Howard the Duck Volume 6 number 1 in November of 2015, and she has actually teamed up with many different characters and teams, including being a member of the X-Men on and off again.
And it's 7 Strix. Silly rabbit, Strix are for kids. I'm not sorry about that one. The Court of Owls storyline that launched Batman into the New 52 is held in high esteem. And directly through these comics came Mary Turner, aka Strix, a former Talon/immortal assassin for the Court of Owls. And she's gone severely underrated. As a child, she was horribly disfigured by a bomb attached to a balloon. That's like if Pennywise was a criminal with no powers. Like, what the actual hell? During her time as an assassin, she faced Batgirl, ultimately letting her go even though she had won, because they both wore masks. She rarely appears outside of her creator's books, but every time she shows up, she's a delight to read. She reformed in an effort to atone for her past, and has been included in the Birds of Prey and Secret Six. While hardly anyone knows her, I know I didn't until I was researching this list, but she is still a wonderful character that deserves to be taken out of limbo and shown more in larger storylines.
Number 6! It's Synch. Everett Thomas isn't a new character by any means, being first introduced in 1994, but while he was a part of Generation X, he didn't officially land on the team until this newest iteration of X-Men. He was also one of the first mutants resurrected by the Five on Krakoa, due to the fact that his powers could enable him to act as a substitute for any of the Five who might need to tag out. With that said, what are his powers? Synch's powers are known as synchronistic power replication. Synch basically produces this really cool funkadelic looking aura that allows him to synchronize with other supers in his vicinity, letting him use their powers unless they leave the vicinity. But what's really interesting is that he doesn't need that person to be completely there. So if you had like a tissue sample from a superpowered person, he could sync with that and it would be enough. Since his resurrection, his powers have been amped up, giving him a limited memory bank of powers he's synced with. He became an official base member of the new X-Men team announced at the Hellfire Gala alongside Laura Kinney in X-Men Volume 5 number 21 in 2022.
Number 5. Apolitical politics. Art Spiegelman is known as one of the most acclaimed comic writers. He even won a Pulitzer Prize for his graphic novel Mouse. When asked to write an introductory essay for a collection of Marvel works, a phrase referring to Donald Trump as an orange skull was highlighted by the editing team, who said that due to Marvel's editorial policy, it would have to be omitted in order for the introductory essay to make it to print in regards to the collection. Spiegelman was slightly surprised and ended up rescinding his essay as a result. This news led to much backlash from both the Marvel and general comic book fan community alike, who criticized Marvel for making political statements only when it was safe or could be used to make them more money, and hiding behind an apolitical policy when they were too afraid to make statements. Let's not forget that Marvel themselves created a villainous version of Trump in 2016's Spider-Gwen annual, known as MODAK, and yet they can't have that phrase in an essay. I mean, what are you doing, Marvel? Which one are we doing here?
Number 4, it's Dupe. First appearing in X-Force number 116 in 2001, Dupe's origin story is kind of hard to explain, because we don't know for a fact what it is. Captain America tells us he was a US Cold War weapons project, and he apparently had some kind of role in the fall of communism. He was originally a member of X-Force until eventually becoming a member of X-Static. For such an unthreatening character, Dupe is surprisingly strong. He has been described as being an extra-dimensional being with a genius-level intellect, bordering on possible omniscience. And he has a large array of psionic powers, one of which includes controlling Russians. He can change his size and shape at will, allowing him to heal wounds and reassemble parts of his body if they have been removed or cut off. He has an incredible level of super strength and durability as well, with an unknown limit, being able to match and overcome Thor in a fight when he was in a weakened state, taking hits from Mjolnir while he did so. He seems to be able to come back from the afterlife, and he also has a pocket dimension inside himself that he can store things in and summon creatures from. He can also completely break the fourth wall and go across the comic panels. Dupe has defeated the devil all by himself. He is overpowered, and I don't know how anyone loses with him on their team.
Getting close to the end at number 3, Bluebird. Originally, it seemed like Bluebird was just going to be a female Nightwing, but she has grown to be much more than a superhero substitute. She is a mix of plenty of members of the Bat family, and makes a pretty big splash when she's thrown into a situation. Harper Row is a young girl living in Gotham's Narrows with her brother Cullen. Seems like a bit of a vampire. They fled from their abusive father and got emancipated, but after randomly meeting Batman, she was determined on joining his team to help him. Her relationship with the Bat is slightly antagonistic but still respectful, which is something else in the DC universe. Batman has mentored many children over the years, and somehow they keep joining even though they'll probably die. But none of the hero's other compatriots have really had this kind of relationship, so she fills a role that nobody else has really been able to. It's nice, fresh, and she has a dope costume. It's very similar to that of Nightwing combined with Red Hood. It's honestly dope, realistic to our world rather than the DC universe. But I just don't know how she turns her neck.
Number 2, Elixir. Joshua Foley, otherwise known as Elixir, is a mutant with Omega-level healing abilities. He's incredibly powerful, and while originally was just considered a general threat, he can actually use his powers offensively as well, completely ending lives if he wants to. Using his mutant ability of biokinesis, Elixir is capable of controlling the biological structure of his own and other people's bodies down to the genetic level. Now this started off small, but has grown to allow him to simultaneously heal dozens of people, resurrect himself and others, and even the ability to control, manipulate, and absorb the life forces of other living creatures. Offensively, he can use his death touch to harm others, to cause different types of illness, massive swellings, and organ failure. He's even completely destroyed the body of enemies before. He is one of the core members of the Five, as I'm sure no one is surprised about, and he has been a member of the X-Men ever since he was one of the only surviving mutants who retained his powers at the Xavier Institute after M-Day, and he was trained to become one in 2006's New Mutants. Number 1. Hope Summers. Hope Summers was the first mutant born after the events of M-Day, the mutant decimation, or the day that Scarlet Witch cast No More Mutants. She was then taken into the far future and raised by Cable, being carried around in the coolest baby Bjorn you'll ever see. Not too long after, she returned to the present and her mutant powers finally activated. Her power is basically that of Omega level power manipulation. She can manipulate the powers of other mutants nearby to her, even mimicking their powers, but at full capacity and with complete control over those powers. And she can even take on multiple powers at once, but it is pretty tiring for her to do that. A large part of her role in the Krakoan society is as the leader of the Five, who use their abilities to resurrect the mutants of Krakoa. Her role on the Five specifically is both to boost their powers to their full potential and help them work in synergy with each other perfectly. She also helped terraform Mars alongside Vulcan and Proteus, giving them enough power to actually do it. She is such a cool character, and she first appeared back in X-Men Volume 2 number 205 in 2008, but was a child for much of that until she came of age and joined X-Force and the X-Men.
Starting us off in at number 10, Mercury. Let's begin our list with a mutant who debuted in August of 2003, in New Mutants Volume 2, Issue 2. Mercury, aka Cecily Kincaid, has the ability to mimic Mercury, hence her codename. Her body is made up of a non-toxic metal that resembles mercury, and she can reshape it or solidify at will, despite still being relatively inexperienced in shapeshifting. She can cling to solid surfaces thanks to her molecular adhesion powers, and has exhibited super strength at times, although the full extent of that strength is still undetermined. Now, she doesn't require food or water, although she does eat to make herself fit in better with others. She ended up being selected by Emma Frost to be part of her Hellion squad, along with a few other of her fellow teenage pals at the Institute, including our next number, in at 9, Rockslide. Rockslide, aka Santo Vaccaro, first debuted in 2003's New Mutants Volume 2, Issue 3, in September of that year. He is a mutant with the ability to transform into a golem form, which he does by assimilating surrounding rock and earth into a Gestalt shell, which he can also detonate at will to cause an explosion. And this form gives him superhuman strength, durability, and endurance. After traveling from his home of Boston to live at the Xavier Institute, he began to befriend the soon-to-be Hellions, with Emma Frost selecting him to be a part of the Hellion squad. He's also got quite the fun personality. Santo dreams of being a superhuman wrestling star. Initially, he was portrayed as a bit of a bully, but now the more that we get to know his character, the more that he's grown, becoming more good-natured and fiercely protective of his friends. He also loves murder mystery television and Dance Dance Revolution, so he's pretty relatable. It's also worth noting that he was one of the students who managed to retain his powers after M-Day.
Number 8, Thanos. Even when Thanos doesn't have his chair to help him teleport around, he's still fairly fast moving, just on foot, even being as big of a guy as he is. You may have forgotten, or you may not know this, but Thanos is actually both a Titan and a mutant. He's a mutant of the Titanian race. His feats for speed include being able to stop Thor's incoming hammer from a close range. He was fast enough to stop it with a single gesture, which is just impressive in and of itself, and being quick enough to dodge an attack from Slatteris, champion of the universe, when he was in possession of the Power Stone. Granted, not that the Power Stone makes you faster, but it's still impressive that he's just dodging those powerful hits. And Trico's pretty fast.
In at number 7, Blindfold. Blindfold is Ruth Aldine, a character who first debuted in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3, Issue 7 in 2005, despite being mentioned several months prior in the same series as Issue 4. Now, she was created by Joss Whedon and John Cassaday, and she's got some wickedly powerful abilities. She's a telepath, is capable of retrocognition, clairvoyance, precognition, reality anchoring, astral projecting, and psychic energy manifestation. Over the years, she's had some other powers that she's lost or regained, including telekinesis, chaos manipulation, and accelerated probability. Now, ever since she was a child, Ruth has worn a blindfold over her eyes in order to cover up her mutation. She was born without eyes, but has powerful psionic abilities. Now, her powers are neutralized when she's in the presence of another precognitive, like Destiny, who explained that when two precogs are in close proximity to each other, it's like they're two magnets pressed together positive pole to positive pole, negatively affecting each other's powers. These days, after Dawn of X, Ruth's predictions about her future proved to be true. She knew that there would be a utopia for most mutants, but because of her precognition abilities and Moira McTaggart's demands that no precogs be allowed on Krakoa, she was not able to join her peers. And at number 6, Bling. Roxy Washington is Bling, with an exclamation point. A mutant who attended the Xavier Institute and was a part of the X-Men in Training Squad, first appearing in X-Men Volume 2, Issue 171 in 2005. She's the daughter of a celebrity couple, two hip-hop artists named Daddy Libido and Sexy Mother. and because of this she had often been targeted by kidnappers or assassins because of her parents' fame. She had no desire to follow in her family's footsteps, and being a mutant who had a diamond form and superhuman durability, and an ability to project diamond shards to boot, she came to the Xavier Institute and was trained under Gambit under his squad. She's also bisexual and had a big old crush on Rogue. I mean, who doesn't? Aside from her genius powers, she's got a genius level intellect, she's a master engineer, and at one point she was recruited for Angel's board at Worthington Industries. She's also not overly caught up in the mutant-human dynamic, she kind of prefers to just not deal with it. To each their own.
Number 5. Iceman and Pyro. Kind of the ultimate couple in a way. While Jean and Emma may be seen as the ultimate fire and ice, they have nothing on Pyro and Iceman. These two literally are fire and ice. They ended up together in X-Men Gold. Iceman officially came out of the closet a few years back, which later resulted in these two having a fling. I should clarify as well that this was Simon Lasker Pyro. Still, I wish we had got to see more of these two together. I also just like that one comes from the Brotherhood and the other is from Charles's team, although this was during Simon's redemption time, so he wasn't really a bad guy anymore. Originally, actually, Bobby was the one who was skeptical about letting him join the Xavier Institute, but I guess he had a change of heart, because they hooked up!
In at number 4, Graymalkin. Jumping forward a few years for this one, let's talk about Jonas Graymalkin, a character who first appeared in Young X-Men issue 1 in June of 2008. Jonas is quite old, narratively speaking. He was born in pre-revolutionary America and spent his youth coming to terms with his sexuality, having realized that he was gay. His father caught him with another boy one day in their family's barn, and believing that Jonas was an abomination and the spawn of the devil, because he was super Christian, he beat Jonas to death, or at least he thought Jonas had died. His father buried him alive in the nearby woods, and this is what triggered Jonas's mutant powers, allowing him to survive around 200 years underground, which just so happened to be under the Xavier Institute. Turns out he's actually an ancestor of Charles Xavier's. Now when a Sentinel attack destroyed the school, he was unearthed. So, what exactly are his powers? It's something called darkness empowerment. It's related to light exposure. The darker it is, the more powerful he becomes. This includes giving him superhuman strength, nigh invulnerability, longevity, or potentially immortality on that front since he survived without food or water for 200 years, and of course, night vision.
Number 3. Apocalypse. Apocalypse's evolutionary abilities allow him to be advanced kind of across the board. He can modify his molecular structure to make himself insanely durable, strong, psychically abled, and of course super fast as well. He can move so fast he has also managed to block attacks from Thor and stop Quicksilver dead in his tracks, even going so far as to taunt Pietro, declaring that the speedster was simply no match for him, and that Quicksilver's speed was useless against him. Ooh, ugh, sick burn. He's like, you can't even, your speed does nothing. Can't touch me, Quicksilver. I'm Apocalypse.
And at number 2, Brandon Sharp. Brandon Sharp, also known as Stryker, first hit the scene in August of 2010 in Avengers Academy issue 1. He has the power of electrokinesis, capable of generating huge amounts of electricity and then manipulating it. This includes creating lightning blasts from his hands and eyes, electromagnetic shields to use for defense, and he can propel himself into the air and fly via electrokinetic flight, up to 40 miles per hour. Unfortunately, he is a bit of a twat. He's a self-centered and egotistical character who's focused on his own gain rather than helping others. Brandon had a bit of a rough upbringing though. His father was an adulterous politician and his mother was fame-hungry, who made him become a child actor. Brandon's manager, Rick, tried to take advantage of the young boy, and that's where Brandon's powers first manifested, frying the limo that they were in and severely injuring Rick. And finally, in at number 1, Velocidad. Gabriel Coelho is Velocidad, a mutant who debuted in 2010 in Uncanny X-Men issue 527. He's another Generation Hope mutant who is a part of the Five Lights with Hope Summers, and kind of also had a thing with her until she caught him making out with Pixie. Unfortunately, he met his end almost 9 years later, dying in Uncanny X-Men Volume 5 issue 21. Now Gabriel is capable of doing something called localized time manipulation. He can slow down the movement of time around him, but remains unaffected by that slowdown. So it does make him appear as if he's moving incredibly fast. But really, he's not a speedster, just a time manipulator, which is what everyone actually initially thought his powers were. Now his powers speed up his aging greatly though, which is what happened after he was detained and forced to use his powers for ONE, the Office of National Emergency. He was merged with Warlock in order to keep him alive, and eventually when Wolverine came across him, he asked Logan to kill him, which the mutant did in an act of mercy. Told you it didn't end well.
Number 10. Luminous. Luminous was actually a pretty cool new villain who seemed to really only be used for one story arc. She was one of the only cool things really to come out of the realization that Wanda and Pietro Maximoff were not actually Magneto's children as we'd been led to believe for years. In fact, they weren't even mutants. They were the product of the High Evolutionary's experimentation, which fit more in line with their origins in the MCU, which I guess is why we changed that. No, I'm not mad about it. Not at all. It turns out the High Evolutionary had also used their genetic material to create a sister for them both, known as Luminous. She possessed both the chaos magic, reality warping powers of Scarlet Witch, as well as the super speed of Quicksilver, and was originally ordered by her father, the High Evolutionary, to kill her genetic siblings. She tried real hard. Number 9. Pets of Evil Masters. While the Pets of Evil Masters might not be the most impactful villains around, they are definitely some of the most adorable. These villains obviously seek to thwart the Pet Avengers, the pets of Earth's most mightiest heroes. Like their heroic opponents, the Pets of Evil Masters are exactly what they sound like, the pets of some of the most vile villains in the Marvel Universe. They are led by Doctor Doom's pet Vulture, Vulture Von Doom, and include Thori, Loki's Hellhound, and Bitey McSpidey, who isn't stated to be owned by any specific villain, but is implied to be the spider that was responsible for creating Spider-Man. On Earth 616, that spider may have died, but on Earth 97161, where the Pets of Evil Masters are from, I guess that little spider lives on, seeking to wreak all kinds of havoc. And before we move on to this next part, just a quick thank you to you for sticking around watching this video, and if you haven't already, something that helps us out a ton here at the channel is clicking that like button, so do it. Click the like button, and if you did already, thank you so much for doing so, it really helps us out. Number 8. Null. While Null did first appear as a mysterious being in Thor God of Thunder issue number 6 in 2013, he wouldn't receive a full appearance with more exploration and embellishment in terms of his history until the summer of 2018. Now Null has become such a big figure that he is threatening not just Venom's existence, but the existence of all of Earth's heroes with the King in Black event that is slated to start in December. Null has come a long way since that first mysterious appearance, and it's likely he's going to aim to go even further to guarantee his place in the Marvel history books and lore for years to come.
Number 7. Poison Ivy. Taking place in Batman-Joker War, we find a ravaged Gotham City. The Joker has sent out all his goons to run around and basically mess the place up. Most of Batman's villains are just laying low at this point, just kinda waiting to see what happens, you know, just watching from afar. Now at this point, we haven't really seen much of Poison Ivy in the storyline. After a brawl with Punchline and Harley, most of Poison Ivy's hidden underground cave, called Eden, burned down. So Poison Ivy returns to look for Harley and she sees the damage. Oh, there were a few of Joker's goons inside, but they obviously didn't last long, as you would have expected. She explains to the last guy before she kills him that she's done with distractions, and instead of rebuilding this cave, which she easily could have done, she summons up this new plant called Devil's Ivy. Cool name too. Speaking of cool names, she reveals her new persona, Queen Ivy. That's right, shortly after she builds a throne, a fancy new outfit, and to top it all off, a crown. I dig it.
Number 6. Ultimatum. Ultimatum is basically Dark Miles Morales from Earth 616. He grew up as part of the Rigoletto crime family and later in his life ended up serving time in prison in place of his cousin. Although Miles Morales, aka Spider-Man, has basically been moved to the Prime Universe of Earth 616 and made it his new home, following the destruction of his original universe, the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610 and the Incursions, there was another Miles Morales who originally was from the main continuity, from Earth 616. We'll call him 616 Miles Morales. Try to make this less confusing for you. That Miles Morales of Earth 616 became a villain, working in league with Kingpin aka Wilson Fisk. 616 Miles has a scarred face and ends up becoming the villain known as Ultimatum. 616 Miles actually took that villain alias of Ultimatum and was planning on trying to send 1610 Miles, Spider-Man, back to his original universe and take over Brooklyn in the ongoing comic series Miles Morales Spider-Man. He was momentarily stopped, however, by Spider-Man himself and Prowler, who escaped his clutches. Miles versus Miles, who wins? Too many Miles! Just kidding, you can never have too many Miles Morales in my opinion. Number 5. Assessor. Assessor is an AI who is working in tandem with Ultimatum, or more specifically working for him. For those who don't know, Ultimatum is basically like evil Miles Morales, who was the Miles of the main continuity of Earth 616 originally. If you want to learn more about him, we actually talked about him in part 2 of this list series, so you can go back and check that out. Assessor as a villain is basically like a humanoid appearing Gladys from the Portal video game same series. They had heroic Miles Morales brought to a testing center where they could run tests to gain in-depth information on his powers, threatening to harm his family members if he did not cooperate. Assessor does not appear to have any human emotions and only allowed Miles to escape after they were satisfied with the information they had already procured from the tests. It's unknown who created Assessor or where exactly they come from. It's all very mysterious. Number 4. Xeno. Xeno is a mutant terrorist group who is composed of others from previous mutant hate groups. The idea is all those mutant hate groups have now unified like the mutants themselves, becoming this new group known as Xeno, which was written to be a play on the word xenophobia. Xeno managed to capture mutant Domino and use her skin to mask their own soldiers as mutants so that they could infiltrate Krakoa and massacre as many mutants as possible before the alarm sounded in the mutant nation. During their first appearance, they managed to assassinate mutant leader Charles Xavier. Though fortunately Charles was able to be resurrected following this instance, and Krakoa covered up the successful assassination to make it seem as though he was never killed in the first place. Because you can't let other world leaders know that your world leader was assassinated. That's it's not so good.
Number 3. Harley Quinn. Making her first debut back in Batman Harley Quinn in 1999 and portrayed by the insanely talented Margot Robbie, literally one of the best actors on the face of the earth, Harley Quinn has always been known for flipping back and forth, changing sides. She's kinda weaving in and out a little bit, Even her character evolution in the new DC movies alone, like looking at Harley in Birds of Prey compared to how we met her in Suicide Squad. In the comics, her relationship with the Joker is abusive and it's controlling, and Harley has histrionic personality disorder, so she has a lot of things in common with the Joker. So when it comes to seeking attention with all these crime lords, she's super entertaining when she tries to get Mr. J's attention. She uses her psychiatrist skills to get in close, get in your head a little bit. She's super lovable as well. I mean, obviously, look who's playing her. I'm glad DC is moving Harley to be her own character in this new live action franchise. It's a nice message too. It's like, you know what, no matter how deep in love you are with a psycho, you can always break out of it, start a gang, and kick some bad guys' ass. There's always time, guys.
Number 2. Annihilation. Annihilation is a dark god who possesses those who wear their golden mask. Whoever so possesses their mask is overtaken by the dark entity within it, and depending on their own strength is often destroyed by the sheer power of the god and mask itself. It is believed to be the spirit of Amenth that manifested, and is also linked to the control and rule over the Amenthi demons. Without anyone wearing the mask to rule them, the Amenthi demons are revealed to be destructive and reckless, destroying anything and everything they can get their hands on without any need for a reason. The shocking revelation of Annihilation's current true identity was recently revealed in the current X-Men run in issue 14. No spoilers for anyone who isn't caught up. Number 1. Kang. Kang the Conqueror is believed to be coming to the MCU in this next cinematic phase. So while he might not be a new villain in terms of the comics, in terms of the MCU he's going to be one of the freshest we've seen. Once he shows up, that is, in Ant-Man 3, which is expected to release in 2022. Woo! 2022, that's a long way away. It is believed that the brilliant Jonathan Majors will be playing Kang, or at least one form of him, and that he'll be showing up in Ant-Man 3. And that's according to the Ant-Man 3 IMDb page. It's right on there if you look at it. The cool thing with Kang, however, is that he's a time-traveling villain who as a result has been known by many different identities and aliases throughout his history. So while Jonathan Majors may be playing one version of him, there might be other actors also playing Kang. The weird thing though with Kang is that he's a time-traveling villain who as a result has been known by many different identities and aliases. So yeah, it could be great or it could be really confusing. We've known him as a Mortis, Rama Tut, and even at one point as Iron Lad. It'll be interesting to see how Marvel and Disney aim to integrate Kang and what this means for not just the main continuity but the potential multiverse within the MCU. So many great and bizarre new villains and reinvented villains coming your way. I don't even know what to think of Kang coming to the MCU. That just seems so strange, but I also feel like sometimes the strangest choices are the best. Also, we're getting Jonathan Majors, so I feel really good about that. I guess only time will tell how that will go. Number 10. Marvel. When Captain Marvel came out, there was a lot of backlash surrounding the film for many reasons, but I'm not here to talk about the SJW stuff. I am here to talk about some changes made to one specific character, Mar-Vell. In the story, the character of Mar-Vell was gender swapped and played by Annette Bening, who I personally thought did a great job as the Kree scientist slash superhero. But why did we gender swap the role? I'm a big fan of gender swaps when they are done well and they mean something, but many people were left to ask why this has been swapped. It didn't seem to inform any relevant changes to the character? Was it because they simply preferred Benning for that role? Or was it to convey an air of mystery in regards to who Mar-Vell was in the story? And if it's the latter, making a great change to the character's alias should have also then happened. As much as I like the idea of the change being plot driven, they then made her alias Wendy Lawson. An obvious parallel for comic fans to the comic book Mar-Vell's Walter Lawson. So yeah, this gender swap didn't really feel relevant and as such left people asking unsatisfied, but why though? Number 9. Strange Academy. Strange Academy's first issue was just recently released early March 2020, but when the comic was first announced it was met with lots of mixed feelings from Marvel fans, and fans of another popular franchise. See if you can guess which one. The idea around Strange Academy was to spin a yarn about a school of uniquely magically gifted youngsters who join an academy in New Orleans to hone their powers. Sounding familiar yet? Many took to Twitter to share their outrage for what was deemed a potential ripoff of many other magically based series and fandoms involving academies. Yep, one of them being, you guessed it, the magical world of Harry Potter. Of course, the first issue is out now, so this is one people can now read up on and decide for themselves if this backlash was warranted or not. Number 8. First openly gay character. In the MCU, that is. When it was rumored that the first openly gay character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe would finally appear after more than 20 films, people were of course excited and eager to find out who the character was and to learn more about them and their story. All the excitement unfortunately only led to disappointment and outrage from fans when we found out that the character, played by Joe Russo himself, was only in 10 seconds of the 3-hour film. 10 seconds, that's all we got. The character was simply an unnamed civilian who is part of a support group led by Steve Rogers himself, seeking to help those who lost loved ones during the snap. What do we discover about him? Well, we discovered that he simply lost his partner and is trying to get back into dating again. He had no importance in regards to the main narrative, and while the filmmakers had good intentions when it came to including an openly gay character, his lack of substance or importance made people feel like Marvel was merely pandering. People had been looking for more meaningful representation, though Kevin Feige and the Marvel and Disney team responded to the backlash, assuring fans that more genuine overall diversity in the world of supers could be expected in the next phase.
Number 7. Laura Kinney. I know, she isn't really new as a character, but Laura Kinney, or X-23, has become the all-new Wolverine, and that is relatively new. She officially joined the X-Men as this Wolverine at the Hellfire Gala in 2021. There are a few characters with powers similar to Wolverine, and there are even a few who are clones of Laura herself. But of all these characters, Laura is certainly the best and definitely the most fan-loved. Her powers are very similar to Logan's, with her primary mutant power being an accelerated healing factor. And obviously she also has retractable bone claws, only she has 2 in her forearms and 1 in her foot. Well, each foot. She was obviously a clone and grew up being made to be a weapon, so of course she has an extremely haunted past. But with Logan as a father figure in her life, she grew up under him, and she even did the same for Gabrielle Kinney, another clone who Laura considers to be her younger sister. She's already done so much, but I just kinda can't wait to see what else she does as Wolverine.
Number 6. Iceman comes out. Okay, so you know me, I'm all for having gay characters and supers in the Marvelverse. I'm even for retconning some characters' sexual orientations to provide a more diverse cast when it comes to some of our original super teams makeup. Because, you know, they were all really straight at the beginning there, because it was the 50s and the 60s. But this retcon got a lot of backlash for a reason that I would say is pretty understandable. Not what was being done, but really more how it was done. A common complaint among Marvel fans when it comes to decisions and retcons that are made for our most beloved characters. The fact that a younger Bobby Drake and a younger Jean Grey from the past had to convince him of his sexuality was weird. Like, why did he have to realize that he'd been gay all along? Why couldn't this have just been a thing that he realized in the present by himself? It just felt very put upon as opposed to being natural and organic. Many people rediscover their sexual orientation and sexuality every day. It isn't like you have to always know from the beginning. It can be more fluid than that. And the way this was written in and then later kind of dropped again made the whole thing feel kind of, well, forced, and like they were using it. Like I said, I like that they made this choice, but like many, I wish that they'd executed the moment of revelation with a bit more grace, and not by saying that if you aren't in love with Jean Grey, you must be gay. Not everyone has to be in love with Jean Grey, guys, okay? Just because you're an X-Men, you don't have to be in love with Jean Grey. Stop it. It's weird.
Halfway through at number 5, Defacer. One of Nightwing's love interests is a reformed criminal. Defacer was once a sidekick to Pigeon, a small-time criminal who Batman and Robin caught and arrested along with Defacer. After she was caught, Shawn Sang was sent to restart her life. After being released, she relocated to Bloodhaven and joined the former villain support group known as the Runoffs. Probably set up by Batman in all honesty, just like the superhero support group. She lived happy in recovery even though she never trusted any superheroes. Then Nightwing showed up and Shawn got arrested on suspected murder. She asked Nightwing if he could help clear her name. After he did, they started dating for a time. She even suited up to help her boyfriend on the occasional criminal takedown. Unfortunately, they didn't last forever. She even got kidnapped by Deathwing. But she was still a cool character, and despite the odd name and backstory, was important to a character we all love. So she should be important to us too, right?
Number 4, Hail Hydra. As much as there was a lot to love about this event, there was also a lot that people were left hating. Captain America ended up being revealed as a longtime Hydra sleeper agent, which was amazing considering how many times he'd publicly fought against Nazis and Hydra, only to be revealed as one of them. This is a big part of Cap's character. Of course, this mentality and plot wouldn't stay permanent. I mean, could you believe if it had? Nope, it was all a dream. Well, not quite a dream, but more an altered reality that happened as a result of some tampering with the Cosmic Cube. However, because it was so against Cap's character, this change created a lot of uproar in the comic community, with people either loving or hating this whole adventure regarding Cap and everyone else that was involved. I think the other thing a lot of people were upset about was the fact that this story felt like it was simply made for shock value, made to shock people into buying comics, because how could Cap be a Hydra agent? What's going on? You just had to find out, which honestly made the whole controversy just a little bit worse. Shock value for comics, I get it, you gotta sell comics, but also, really? Like, that's very shocking for people that are huge fans of Captain America.
Coming in at number 3, it's Tempest. Eva Bell first was seen in all new X-Men #1 in 2012 when we also saw her mutant powers manifest. She was out with friends and a boy when her brother showed up and began to get into a fight with that boy. The stress and duress of the situation caused her powers to pop off, and she completely froze everyone within a city block of her in time for 20 hours until the X-Men showed up, helped her, and then took her in. She's been referred to as near Omega level with her ability of chronokinesis within a time bubble, meaning she can freeze and slow down time and is one of the best at it in the world. She can also speed up time in the bubble by decades if she chooses to, which is why she is a member of the Five to age up whoever is being resurrected. And she can even time travel. Although she has shown to lose control over this power from time to time, there is no doubt she is and can become more incredibly powerful.
Number 2, Avengers vs. Martin Scorsese. This backlash from Marvel fans was not directed at Marvel itself, but instead at Martin Scorsese, who remarked that MCU films were more about entertainment than the art of cinema. Fans not only revolted against the famed director, but also revolted against those who sided with him, which oddly enough included 2015's Fantastic Four film director and writer Josh Trank. Although he deleted the tweet after, he originally posted on Twitter his opinion of a genre of films that he actually was oddly enough a part of, despite the fact that FF was not really part of the MCU, saying, "Watching The Irishman, the first 5 minutes have more humanity and truth and cinematic intrigue than the running length of every single Marvel movie combined. Ah, sorry, facts. P.S. not sorry." Wow, hashtag troll life. Number 1, Snowflake and the New Warriors. I mean, you knew we were going to talk about this, right? The New Warriors was always meant to be a team about radicalizing the world of heroes. They were meant to be edgy and relatable to the youth of today. But this version of the New Warriors takes that commitment a little too far, and while trying to make themselves more relatable, only seems to end up inevitably distancing the very people they want to attract. The backlash surrounding the New Warriors is not about what they're trying to do, but like with most things, the lack of tact they seem to be able to exhibit while reinventing this squad of supers. It's almost like the squad was made without anyone actually reaching out and conversing with the groups that they're meant to represent. Oh, wait. The most problematic of the new heroes appears to be Snowflake and Safe Space. Snowflake is the first Marvel superhero to be explicitly labeled as non-binary. Cool, but why are we calling them Snowflake? Add in the fact that Safe Space, another term that is often made fun of online and often thrown around in a condescending way in regards to the LGBTQ community, is the name of Snowflake's twin, and that the two are described as a binary pair. And you already have more cringe to add to an already pretty cringy problem. Especially when you look at how the two are often drawn together, how they hold one another. Anyone else getting some icky Maximov twincest vibes here? No, just me? Ooh. Number 10. Sink and Monet. Sink and Monet met at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. The two students developed feelings for one another and began dating. Monet was actually very guarded still around the other mutants when it came to her abilities. The only person she ever seemed to be comfortable around at the time was Sink. The two's romance was brief, however, ending almost as soon as it had started, as Everett Thomas passed away, using his powers to sync with Monet and take on her powers so that he could protect human students of the school that he was near from bombs that had been placed in the school by Emma's evil sister, Adrienne, which exploded. Although he was able to protect the other students, he was not able to protect himself and died from his injuries. Sink has since been resurrected and resurfaced in Dawn of X on Krakoa, where Monet also is. She helped in the mission to destroy the Mother Mold, but we have yet to see these two rekindle their high school flame since Sink's first death. Actually, I don't think we've really seen them interact yet, so see how that goes when they do. Though of course nothing will happen because nothing ever officially happens in Dawn of X, it's all subtext. It's all in the subtext. Sexy, sexy subtext. Number 9. Beast and Abigail Brand. While Abigail Brand might not be considered an X-Men, she is still a mutant, and Beast is certainly an X-Men. He's been around for a real long time with the X-Men. Abigail first confessed that she had feelings for Beast near the end of the Joss Whedon run on Astonishing X-Men, also revealing that she was a mutant as well. From there, these two would date, and Abigail has even let it slip that she would like to have children with big bouncing blue Beast. They'd have big bouncing, probably green babies. Green furry babies. Number 8. Fantomex and Psylocke. These two have always had a strange relationship because it was one that no one really expected to happen. A lot of people still enjoyed it though because Psylocke and Fantomex are both really cool, badass characters, and they're both comic book hotties. And when people are both cool, we figured that's a good enough reason to ship them sometimes, so I think that's sort of where this relationship came from. After a bit of flirting in Volume 1 of Uncanny X-Men, it was later established that these two cared deeply for one another. Psylocke even met Fantomex's mom, and later it was revealed that Weapon 13, which is kind of an AI mind that is also a part of Fantomex, was deeply in love with Psylocke, so the three agreed to become one, in a romantic sense. Weapon 13, Fantomex, and Psylocke. It's a triad thing. Fantomex is weird. He is both an AI living within him and a ship for a nervous system that are both part of him, but he's also as amazing as he is complex, so there you go. I'm sorry if I didn't explain Fantomex completely right. He is a very confusing dude. Still love him though, still excited for that giant size. Giant size Fantomex, it's gonna happen. Number 7. Kitty Pryde and Star-Lord. These two first met and worked alongside each other in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, where both the Guardians and the X-Men worked together to get a young Jean Grey back from the Shi'ar. At the end of the adventure, Star-Lord gave Kitty a holographic phone so they could keep in touch. Ooh. Their romance began to blossom as they continued to contact one another just to chat. Eventually, they were trying to date long distance, and when Peter was kidnapped during one of their long distance dates, Kitty showed up, all the way from Earth, to rescue him. Aww. From then on, they were officially a thing. The two continued to see one another and were even engaged for a time. Kinda like them together too. I just feel like they're both kind of free spirits, they're both cool people. Number 6. Rogue and Deadpool. In a strange but kinda sweet turn of events, these two hooked up during their time together in the Uncanny Avengers in Volume 3 of the series. The two hook up after dealing with Red Skull. It seems that both members of the team had actually had a thing for one another. Wade confesses that although he's always liked Rogue, he hasn't spoken up because he wanted to protect her, but she pushes the issue, telling him that she doesn't need protection. Love when Rogue gets sassy with people. The whole thing is actually pretty sweet though, even though I'm a long time fan of Gambit and Rogue being together and I heavily ship that. I really liked this little momentary hookup. Later on, Rogue would sassily tell Gambit, who complained about the whole thing and how everyone called to tell him that she kissed Deadpool when they finally got back together for a mission. They were not dating at the time, by the way. That she didn't just kiss Deadpool, she made out with him, and she even insinuated that he was a better kisser than Remy. Ooh.
And at number 5, Trance. Next up we have another mutant who debuted in 2005, Trance. Trance first hit the scene in New X-Men Academy X issue 12. Trance, whose name is Hope Abbott, is a mutant with a particularly interesting power. She has an energetic astral projective form in which she projects her astral self and can travel over far distances in this form, as well as avoid physical injury and can produce a disruptive energy surge. The first time her powers manifested in her hometown of Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, it looked as if a ghost had come out of her body and it actually gave her father a heart attack. She was then sent by her parents to the Xavier Institute in hopes of her being cured of this mutation. Culturally sophisticated and voted the best dressed by her classmates, Hope never really made the cut when it came to the formation of a new X-Men team, but she stayed at the Institute to train further. She has a decent amount of untapped power that she's yet to learn to control, like creating arcing energy surges that can stun foes, and bend metal or concrete.
Number 4. All the mutants? Okay, so hear me out. With Dawn of X being what it is, and the nation of Krakoa emerging out of it, and with all of mutant kind coming together and so much vagueness surrounding who is with who right now, there seems to be a lot of evidence pointing towards the idea that Krakoa is just all about free love. No one has been explicitly tied to anyone, and yet all history is acknowledged, and so in a way it seems like almost everyone is tied to everyone. It just makes me think that there's a lot more partner swapping than ever happening on Krakoa, where no one really seems to even be fully partnered. Like everyone holds each other's hands and everybody's touching each other, and what's happening? After all, other than returning those fallen mutants that they have lost, the first law on Krakoa is to make more mutants. And I feel like they mean this in more ways than just one. That's right, people making babies on Krakoa. I said it. We haven't seen it, but I think it's happening. It's all happening off panel. I can't handle all the sexy subtext. I have so many thoughts in my brain. Number 3. Wolverine and Cyclops. Okay, so while this has never been confirmed as an official thing, in Krakoa there's been a lot of interesting flirty signals between these two. While they've always been rivals, they have also just as often been colleagues and great friends. But in the Dawn of X relaunch via subtext we get some hints that there might be more going on here. In the new giant size Jean and Emma comic, these two both seem pretty pally while they're waiting for Jean and Emma to uncover what was wrong with Storm. They sat close together, shoulder to shoulder, smelling flowers, and while it seems like Jean and Scott are one big happy family right now on Krakoa in the newest X-Men series out of 2019, issue number 7, we see that Wolverine appears to be staying with the couple at the summer house. When Logan confides that he didn't sleep great to Scott, Scott responds saying that he understands what that is like for Logan, with all the hair and dealing with being both too hot and then too cold, with and without covers, as though he's shared a bed with Logan before. This is like a weird thing to know about someone. Then they talk about Logan potentially joining him and Jean and the kids on a vacation. While Logan seems excited at the prospect of Jean in a bikini, he also seems somewhat interested at the idea of Scott in a Speedo. Well, there's always been some weird love triangle involving these two and Jean. In Dawn of X, it seems ever more prominent. So I think they might be together in some kind of strange triad. I'm for it. I ship it. I like it. Number 2. Emma Frost and Jean Grey. Emma and Jean just recently had their giant size together, which by the way was one of the prettiest comics I have ever read. I know it's early, but there is already talk of it being considered one of the most beautiful comic issues out of this year. Shout out to Russell Dodderman for this amazing art, by the way. So alongside this comic being gorgeous, the story was also compelling, and in it we got hints of just where these two ladies might be at in their relationship. Jean and Emma have always been seen as opposites, and have spent a lot of time in the comics arguing over Scott. But even though they're opposite in a lot of ways, they're also similar in a lot of ways. And in Dawn of X, it seems like they're ready to bury the hatchet, and maybe even all be in a relationship with Scott? Jean and Emma have some really intimate touches in their giant size, and have had some playful banter surrounding a compliment that Jean gives to Emma on her shoes. All in all, nothing is explicitly said here, but like with Logan and Scott, there is a lot of subtext between these two ladies. And I just feel like maybe there's something happening with them and Scott too? I don't know. And then like, do these two triangles overlap? Is it just one big circle? What's happening? I'm into it. I'm just, what's going on? Number 1. Cable and X-23. In volume 2 of Fallen Angels, these two have been playing the flirting game pretty ferociously. And while kind of a weird pairing, I like them together. It's also kind of cute that they are both offspring of two other often rivals and kind of besties, Logan and Scott. It only makes their whole potential relationship cuter. These two are constantly watching out for one another, and when they join Psylocke's team of butterflies in Fallen Angels, Laura Kinney originally doesn't even want Nathan on the team. She's worried for his safety, revealing that she cares about him, although she pretends she's not interested in him. Just cute. I'd be interested to see the going-ons between these two off panel, because there's definitely some chemistry there.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Dawn of the Dead. Making his first appearance in Taskmaster Volume 2, Issue 2. Okay, right off the bat, this guy rocks. I mean, look at this dude's style. Come on, he knows he's poppin'. He's a former SHIELD operative, and while he was a military advisor to the Mexican Armed Forces, he had met Taskmaster. Now, after he had left SHIELD, he got this amazing new persona, Dawn, D-O-N, of the dead, which is my new favorite name for any villain ever. That's it. He pretends to be Mexican and was elected a governor in Western Mexico. It was there that he was trained by Taskmaster, and now he's the leader of his very own cartel that focuses on methamphetamine. Nice. So this is a wild villain. Every panel of this guy is super flashy and very dramatic. Of course. He's also quite the performer. In his first issue, you see him addressing a crowd of Hannah Montana wannabes, saying that this is what real narcos sounds like. Again, the guy from S.H.I.E.L.D. pretending to be Mexican. Awesome. Duly noted.
And before we move on with our list, guys, if you could just go ahead and toss us a thumbs up, because, you know, it helps us a lot here at the studio. And thank you very much to everyone that has already done that. Thank you. Number 9, Macho Gomez. Macho shows up as a random villain to Deadpool in issue 32 of his 2008 series. He is basically an alien hitman who thinks he's the best. Definitely better than the earthbound merc with a mouth, Deadpool. In reality, he proves to not be as great as he thought he was. Deadpool makes quick work of him and then ends up going on a space adventure to get paid and to prove his mettle to the galaxy and the universe. This prompts an epic space opera arc where Deadpool takes over Macho's life, taking his former job and even marrying his widow.
Number 8, the Builders. The oldest race in the universe, and they actually consider themselves perfect beings. Okay, wow, we're gonna go there. I see you. Yeah, okay, you're perfect. Sweet. Beyonce and the Builders. Man, that's a tough one. Here we go. They're so perfect. I mean, how do we pick between the two, you know? They worship the Mother Maker herself, the universe. The Builders created these aggressive systems to direct, shape, and control the very structure of space and time. So they think they're the shit. There are two types of builders, the creators and Bob the Builders. No, there's creators and then the engineers. They seeded worlds for billions of years and directed the evolution of civilization. I mean, I get it, you're cool, you're old, you think y'all are the best, you're not perfect though, okay? Spoiler alert, you look like bugs. Huh? You guys look like Ultron if he was covered in cow sh**.
Number 7, Immortal Abomination. Immortal Abomination is the devastating monster that first appeared in Immortal Hulk issue 18. He appears to be genetic material belonging to Emil Blonsky spliced with that of Rick Jones, which gives us a really messed up version of Rick with 2 heads in a monster body. This version of Rick Jones and Abomination is also referred to as Subject B. Eventually, he was put down later on in Immortal Hulk, but he is a horrifying, powerful, and emotionally painful creature for the Hulk to come up against, especially considering how close he and Rick Jones were. This version of Abomination, it should be noted, is different from the Abomination that we later come to know originally as General Reginald Fortean. The General Fortean version of Abomination first appeared in issue 19 of the Immortal Hulk series.
Number 6, Deadpool Corps. Making their debut in 2010, Deadpool Corps are, well, they're a team of Deadpools, as you would have guessed. Their first issue, Prelude to Deadpool Corps issue 1, they are founded by Earth 616 Deadpool after the Contemplator chose him to be the one to stop this cosmic entity, the Awareness. Super aware. The Awareness does this really neat thing where it devours the multiverse consciousness. Awesome. The Deadpool Corps have a unique mind that makes them immune to it. And they ride in style, using the B. Arthur as means of transportation. Which is not a bad ride at all. I mean, I'd pull up at that. Let's go. The Deadpool Corps joined forces after Dreadpool formed an evil version of the Corps. That, of course, had out to, you know, massacre every version of himself in the multiverse. And the Deadpool Corps were short-lived, but as usual, a lot of bloody disgusting fun. Number 5, Joker. This one is super recent. I did say spoilers at the beginning of this video. You were warned. Warned, I tell you. So in Batman Joker War, the Joker appears to be wearing a bat suit. Yeah, and it's pretty bad looking too. I mean, come on. He's got the smile across his chest, they got the ha-ha-ha's written on the side, and to top it all off, he's even sporting the purple cape. It's amazing. So Batman had no idea that this is what he would find. I mean, first a dead Alfred greeting him, and then now a Joker in a bat suit. Get me out of this nightmare, what is going on? So how did this even come about? While Punchline and Joker's goons turned Gotham into a flaming death zone, like I mentioned earlier, the Joker was busy going after Wayne's fortunes. And I loved seeing this version of the Joker as well, like going after Wayne's money right off the bat, pun intended, even confirming his own actions by saying, you know what, I'm going against my own brand on this one. It's just fun. And we also saw similar looking suits back before Suicide Squad even came out, and like promo material and stuff. And it got us pretty hyped up. Me and my friends were talking about it. Yet it never happened. A lot of those things just didn't happen in that movie, eh? Number 4, Detroit Steel. Making his debut in Invincible Iron Man Volume 2, issue 25, we have another big badass suit guy, Doug Johnson III. a former army soldier who ended up working for Hammer Industries. He was the pilot rocking the big bad America suit. Everybody had thought that Doug was dead, and usually when this happens, it's either awful or it works out in your favor. I know from experience, you know? So Mock, breaker of faith, turned him into stone during conflict. Then, when good guy Odin restored everybody, he was of course one of them. His family, the army, and Hammer Industries still thought that he was dead though, so he decided to use this in his favor. He got his passport, returned to America, and then kidnapped Sasha Hammer in order to get the Detroit steel armor back in his hands. Justine Hammer was on board with this whole plan. Obviously, she was going to blow up the armor as soon as she got the chance, right? Well, Dougie Johnny III was already way ahead of the game. He had hacked Hammer's systems earlier so that it had no effect on him, which is not a bad idea at all.
Number 3. Mutant Trauma Support Group. The Mutant Trauma Support Group is a new group with an age-old message to deliver to all humans who hate mutants. You are not alone. The group offers support without judgment to those who have been wronged or felt like they have been wronged by mutants. They offer no judgment, only support. No hate speech or degrading comments are allowed in the community unless directed towards mutants. The group appears to have all their revenge missions and anti-mutant gatherings organized via an online community, possibly via a social media channel or some kind of exclusive forum. They first appeared in 2020's Wolverine in issue number 4, where they targeted, you guessed it, Wolverine. Although they had their plans of vengeance cut short by an unexpected guest, it's likely that there are many more members of the group that we could run into in the future.
Number 2. Evil Deadpool. Making his first appearance in Deadpool Volume 2, issue 44, Evil Deadpool is somebody I think we're gonna see pretty shortly on the big screen. Yes, of course, I have a theory here. So the origins of Evil Deadpool are pretty wild. So Ella Whitby, who we all remember as the British psychiatrist who's obsessed with the loudmouth, but just how obsessed you ask? Well, I mean, she collects body parts from Wade Wilson and then leaves them in her freezer, right next to the ice packs and frozen pizzas, of course. So when Deadpool found this cool box of yuck, he tossed the parts in a dumpster. Now, Wade's healing factor is so good. How good is it, Taylor? Well, they all formed together and grew back. Ugh, imagine the smell. He ended up stealing a private jet and traveled to the States, where he ran into his other half, literally. The tiny legs part in Deadpool 2 was great and super funny, but what's up with his second half? Are they growing another Deadpool? I sure hope so. The evil twin thing seems to be working well. We'll watch 1,000 of those all day, every day.
Number 1. Solemn. Solemn is one of the champions fighting on the side of Arakko during the Ten of Swords event. Initially, we were introduced to him in 2020's Wolverine in issue 6, where he appeared as the perfect match for Wolverine. But although we've seen them dance around one another and even team up to take on a demon horde in hell, we still have yet to see these two battle one another. The reason why they seem so appropriately matched? Solemn is an Iraqi mutant with adamantium skin, meaning he, in comparison to Wolverine's adamantium skeleton, is on the same level of durability. As far as we know, he doesn't possess Wolverine's advanced healing factor though, but he is known for being a smooth talker, and both himself and Wolverine each possess a Muramasa blade, meaning that they would be easily able to slice each other up with their swords. Because, you know, Muramasa cut through anything. Also take your powers away.
In a 10 hazmat. One day while making out with her boyfriend, Jennifer Takada stops when he falls into a coma. It turns out powers she didn't know she had activated, releasing enough radiation to cause the coma. Unluckily for her, her powers activated during a time where Norman Osborn was the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. So they found her and took her in for rigorous testing against her will, in the efforts of making her stronger and to use her as a weapon. He locked her in a suit that caused her to constantly leak enough radiation that anyone who would come close to her would die. But after escaping and being brought into the Avengers Academy, she developed a friendship with Metal, which abruptly ended when he was murdered by Arcade. Recently, she's been able to get some degree of control over her abilities, which lets her work outside of the suit, but she's had a tough life as all superheroes have, and she currently works with Captain Marvel. In a 9 fast track, Mina Dewan was a Star Labs employee until a Speed Force storm struck her, turning her into a superhero. She was able to pick up on her abilities quickly, and was able to keep up with Barry Allen physically and mentally. She was an excellent partner for the Flash, and even helped to mentor the new Kid Flash. But she was in a tricky situation. It appeared like she had been killed by Godspeed. She had returned as an agent of the Black Hole, a villainous organization that is currently being explored in the CW show, so we may see her pop up in later episodes. But that will take a different route since in the comics Mina and Barry dated, so they won't really be able to include that as a story element in the show. Do you watch the show? And do you think that Fast Track will make an appearance? They haven't had a new speedster in a few seasons after all. Not including Earth 90 Barry, that was the original TV series. But with only half a season left, they'll have to fast track the story. I'm sorry. And it ain't Jane Foster. Jason Aaron's popular Thor run led to one of the biggest twists or shakeups or earthquakes, whatever you want to call it, in Thor history. Thor was briefly deemed unworthy of wielding Mjolnir, but in the wake of this moment, it fell to Jane Foster. She took on the mantle of Thor in stride as the Nine Realms raged in war, but the reason that was given for her worthiness was something that would even make Odin himself cry. She was dying of cancer. Every time she transformed, it would reverse the effects of her chemotherapy. Being Thor was killing Jane, but that wouldn't stop her, hence why she was worthy. She understood that Earth needed protecting, and she asked Thor could do that. She was such a popular character, in fact, that they are adapting her role onto the screen, with Natalie Portman returning as Jane in Thor Love and Thunder, where she will reportedly use a restored Mjolnir, since the MCU one broke.
Number 7. Quicksilver dies. Quicksilver is known for being one of the fastest, if not the fastest person in the Marvel Universe. His need for speed has saved the Marvel Universe more than once, and he's a popular and well-known character and stable among the superhero community. And yet, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he was reduced to death by bullet. Yep. A guy who in the world of Fox Marvel X-Men can apparently move fast enough to save the entire occupants of the X-Mansion, Fish included, from an explosion as it is in the midst of happening. Really? Really, Disney and Marvel? Really, you gonna do him like that?
Gabrielle Kinney is a young clone of X-23, which basically means she's a clone of a clone. There has got to be a term for that. There's actually the possibility of that now though. Typically when you create a clone in real life, they would have some form of abnormality. But scientists at the Rcon Center for Developmental Biology in Japan managed to clone 24 generations of mice from a single one. They were even able to reproduce on their own. So there could be up to like 23 more clones of Wolverine. Oh god. There is a point to that however, because she is one of a group of 10 clones of X-23, Bellona, Zelda, X-23 Par being a few. She escaped Alchemax with these sisters and ended up getting adopted by X-23, who ended up becoming her mother figure. She possesses the typical Wolverine powers, but with bone claws rather than metal. She also has a pet Wolverine called Jonathan, which just makes her that much better and honestly the sweetest thing on this list. She was unfortunately missing in Jonathan Hickman's X-Men relaunch, and now she goes by Scout, but I think that Honey Badger is the cuter name, so I'm gonna keep calling her that for this list.
Number 5. Zorn. Question: what would you do if you and your twin brother developed the mutant ability of having your head become a star? Answer: I honestly don't know how you would still be alive to decide what to do in the first place. Shen Zorn and his twin brother Quan Yin Zorn both developed mutant powers that, in essence, were tiny stars that burned away and replaced their actual heads. They were both isolated, and they both wear super cool looking iron helmets with power dampeners to contain their power from doing too much damage. Shen is called Zorn with a Z, and his head is actually technically a black hole. And to keep things not confusing, Quan Yin is also named Zorn, but with an X. Okay, so what the heck can they do with their powers? Well, both of these characters can produce gravitational electromagnetism, which could actually allow them to heal others and use telepathy, and also, really weirdly, somehow allowed them to sense when people died and speak using shaking gravitational particles. Zorn, the one with a Z, could suck people into his black hole and even turn his black hole back into a sun. They could also both obviously do a lot of damage, using the power of a star to burn, blind, and incinerate people. They both became members of the X-Men at different times. X-Zorn was the first in 2002, but he wasn't always good. And his brother, Z-Zorn, joined more than a few years later.
And at 4, Robbie Reyes. Robbie Reyes was a young mechanic working in California, and the neighborhood he lived in was plagued by gangs and corruption, which would make several things difficult to say the least. He wanted to move into a safer neighborhood to keep himself and his brothers safe, but to raise the money he entered a street race to win $50,000. But when he got in the lead, what he thought were police started following him. Eventually he drove to a dead end, so he got out to explain himself, but then the men shot him, killing him. They tried to burn the car as well as his body, but his car was possessed by a ghost, which then possessed him, turning him into a new Ghost Rider. He chased after his killers and managed to get some of them, but not all. And as a Ghost Rider, he wants to be more than a spirit of vengeance, and after joining the Avengers, he proves to be one of their most powerful allies, even holding his own against the likes of the Celestials. He even made an MCU debut in Season 4 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is canon to the MCU because of Phil Coulson, but also because if you watched the show you'd understand why the Avengers were after Loki's staff in Age of Ultron.
Number 3. Fake mutants. That moment when Marvel retconned the origins of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, declaring that they were no longer, nor had they ever truly been, mutants. Excuse me? In Uncanny Avengers Volume 2 Issue 4, it was confirmed that these two were not mutants, but had been disguised as mutants by the High Evolutionary, who had experimented on them, got bored, and disguised them as mutants, just for funsies. But this whole retcon really started during the Axis event. During Axis, Wanda basically found out through a magical blood test, as the results came flooding in, that Magneto was not her father. Although Quicksilver was confirmed as her biological brother, which, given everything that was implied between the two in the Ultimate Universe and their intense love for one another even in the main continuity, would have actually been something that I think we'd prefer retconned out of existence. Please, tell us they aren't related. The retcon of Pietro and Wanda Maximoff not being related to Magneto or being considered mutants was something that made years of family drama and much of House of M feel irrelevant, which I think is why people kind of felt, betrayed by this.
And at 2, Finesse. Anything you can do, she can do better, she can do anything better than you. Since Jean Foucal's power is being able to perfectly mimic anything she sees, a power set very similar to Taskmaster, who she in fact suspects to be her real father. She was recruited into the Avengers Academy while training to be an Olympic athlete at the age of 14, and proved to be one of the most interesting characters, struggling with social situations but always demonstrating skill, since anything the best fighters could do, she could do after seeing it. She always prioritized knowledge over human interaction, thus making things awkward when interacting with others. Same, I totally relate. She also struggles to not cross lines, like when she blackmailed Quicksilver and betrayed X-23. She joined the Academy at the same time as Hazmat from earlier on the list, but definitely was a more interesting character. She blackmailed Quicksilver using her guess that he was never replaced by a Skrull, and because of this, he taught her everything he learned as a part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Interesting, but at least she's smart enough to figure it out. She had graduated MIT before being recruited after all. And yes, at 14. Finally, taking our number 1 spot, Gotham Girl. Superpowers don't really have a place in Gotham City, but with Rebirth, Tom King thought that a pair of superheroes were needed in the shadow that is Gotham City. Everything the light touches is your kingdom. What's that shadowy bit? That's Gotham. The two siblings known as Gotham Girl and Gotham, how creative, have similar abilities to Superman and were the starring attractions of the early Batman Rebirth issues, but their powers had a terrible catch. The more they used them, the closer they got to dying. Similar to Jane Foster, their powers were killing them, and they learned this the hard way. Gotham died because he pushed his powers too far, leaving Gotham Girl alone to fight for herself. Since Gotham Girl was more liked than Gotham, the writers made a good decision, and she eventually found Batman as a mentor who was teaching her how to fight crime without using her powers. That's an incredible story. A vigilante who has godlike powers but is unable to use them without potentially dying. That's more compelling than anything else on this list. It's wonderful and links Batman and Superman more than ever before.
Number 10, Quicksilver. Okay, so I know Pietro is no longer considered a mutant, and that he and his sister were both retconned out of that realm. But I think that we can still all acknowledge and respect that for a long time he was known as the fastest mutant out there. In fact, the X-Men films made him so fast that many even questioned, why would you have anyone else on that team? Why is that even necessary? Quicksilver could do anything. If you have Evan Peters Quicksilver around, you just need a team of 1. He was just ridiculously fast. For him, time stood still. Now granted, as I said, he's no longer considered a mutant, but I could do a top 10 list about all of the plot holes that retcon created, so please just let me have this one spot in memory of how awesome of a mutant Quicksilver once was. I mean, he's still an awesome character, of course, but he's no longer a mutant, which is why he gets the number 10 spot. Number 9, Gambit. When it comes to reflexes, Gambit has to be one of the fastest mutants around. Remy LeBeau has insanely fast and high-level reflexes when it comes to dodging all kinds of projectiles, laser beams, and, well, just about anything that you can throw his way. This is due to the fact that Remy was raised in the Thieves Guild and was trained at a young age to become one of the most agile thieves around. He is also, of course, trained with the X-Men in the Danger Room to work on honing his skills. And he can even use his mutant powers to tap into energy and use it to enhance his own speed.
Moving on to number 8, Armor. Armor, aka Hisako Akichi, is a Japanese mutant who first appeared in October of 2004 in Astonishing X-Men issue 4. Her mutant powers are pretty rad. She has the ability to generate an impenetrable psionic exoskeleton body armor that gives her superhuman strength, reflexes, agility, endurance, stamina, dexterity, durability, and invulnerability. Not too shabby, huh? Her goal was always to become an X-Man, and she went through some pretty traumatic stuff while she was a student at Xavier's. After the alien villain Ord attacked the school, her best friend Wing had been injected with a cure for his mutant ability, and eventually he committed suicide because of it, with Armor, along with Kitty Pryde and other students at the time, all being trapped inside the danger room with his reanimated corpse. That happened when the room became sentient and hostile towards them, so not a good experience for her, needless to say.
Number 7, Nightcrawler. Okay, so yes, Nightcrawler is a teleporter, and I know I said I was going to try to not go there, so I'm kind of cheating a little bit here by including him, but even ignoring his teleportation powers, which would of course place him at the tippy top of this list, Kurt is still pretty fast even without them. Nightcrawler has been fast enough to dodge closer range bullets from what appear to be a small Gatling or a machine gun, and has been shown to be capable of outrunning danger room missiles. Spider-Man has even said before that Nightcrawler's agility and reflexes rival even his own, which is pretty impressive because Spider-Man's pretty quick. Number 6, Cannonball. Sam Guthrie is a fan favorite when it comes to the world of X-Men and mutants. His abilities allow him to summon a force field while moving at superhuman speeds. He can fly and use his force field to shield himself and others or attack with it. He has been shown to move within a fraction of a second, managing to distract Quicksilver long enough to catch him off guard. He also constantly manages to react fast enough to protect himself and others against surprise explosions, gunfire, and psychic attacks. And he's also managed to move fast enough to outmaneuver the skilled fighter and fellow X-Men member Psylocke, which is pretty impressive. She's a pretty skilled fighter and pretty quick. Number 5, Speed. Some think it's possible Speed could even end up being faster than Quicksilver. Speed is Thomas Shepard, a mutant who comes to us from the original roster of the Young Avengers. While we don't quite know how fast he can run, we know that he can move at least at speeds of Mach 4. That's the same speed as sound, and means he can cover almost 5,000 kilometers or just over 3,000 miles per hour. That is fast. His heightened speed also dramatically increases his reaction time when it comes to his reflexes and his agility in a fight. Number 4, Magneto. Maybe not the guy you'd originally have thought of when you thought of a fast mutant. You may have not come into this list being like, I bet Magneto will be on it. But you better believe it, Magneto is speedier than you initially thought he was. He is fast enough to catch a bullet and even catch and stop multiple ones before they can hit when targeted by multiple guns at close range. And sure, his whole mutant powers are magnetism, so we could say he's fast, but only with this specific power set. But even then, we'd kind of be wrong. He has not only been able to react fast enough, granted using his powers, to stop Quicksilver from getting away, but he was also fast enough to momentarily catch Northstar with his bare hands, whose speed could, in theory, approach the speed of light. In theory. More on that later.
Moving on to number 3, Transonic. Transonic, also known as Laurie Tremette, debuted in July of 2010 in Uncanny X-Men issue 526. She is a mutant with supersonic flight, capable of not only propelling her body through the air at transonic speeds, but also can change her physical properties in order to have better maneuverability in the air, which she does at higher altitudes or when traveling at high speeds. She's been able to make herself look like a large flying fish or a missile. When Laurie first appeared in Uncanny X-Men, she was a blue teenager, quite literally, having difficulty coping with her mutation. When the X-gene manifested in her, it took no real form, but it caused her skin to change color, for her to lose her hair, and gave her flu-like symptoms. So she tried to commit suicide by jumping off a building, but in doing so, it actually activated her powers. Eventually, she joined up with Hope Summers as one of the 5 Lights, becoming a prominent character in the Generation Hope series. Now, aside from her powers, she's an incredibly smart and thoughtful mutant, setting logic as the rationale for her actions, and getting annoyed at her teammates when they confuse things like ethics and morals. She's also Canadian, so...
Number 2, Aurora. Jean-Marie Boubier is the twin sister of Northstar, Jean-Paul Boubier. She is known for her time as a member of the Canadian hero team, Alpha Flight, where she was an integral part of the team. Her powers are identical to her brother's, making her capable of potentially nearing the speed of light. Potentially. However, she did have her body at one point molecularly restructured by a Dr. Langowski, which resulted in a slight reduction to her speed, unfortunately. Though Aurora is still faster than the speed of sound, she's no longer chasing the speed of light like her brother potentially can. Number 1, Northstar. Were you surprised by this or not? And of course, finally, Northstar. Northstar was one of the few mutants at the time when Quicksilver was still considered a mutant, who could have potentially rivaled him as being one of the fastest mutants out there, as well as one of the fastest characters within the Marvel Universe, period. Like his twin sister, Jean-Paul was also a valued member of Alpha Flight, and even spent some time on the X-Men roster as well, though he was initially hesitant to join, as he thought they might just want him for marketing reasons, being that he is one of the few openly gay mutants. But they assured him that his skills, abilities, and his attitude were more what they were after. His abilities allow him to use kinetic energy to increase the speed of his entire body, or just parts of his body. In theory, he could potentially move near to the speed of light, Mach 1, but we've never seen him do so, likely because of how much strain it would put on him physically as well as mentally, and the fact that doing so could actually harm those in his vicinity. Still, the fact that it could even be possible makes him pretty fast. And even without it, even if he doesn't approach the speed of light, he's still one of the fastest around.
Number 10, the Joker. In the Last Night on Earth series, we find Bruce Wayne at Arkham Asylum. Yeah, it's super sad and dark. He wakes up to discover that he has never in fact been Batman. Like when he goes to hug Alfred, the panel quickly cuts and then Batman is like out in this random wasteland almost. And he has like this sort of asylum suit on with wavy pieces of white clothing that kind of blows behind him. It looks like Edward Scissorhands or like a mummy. It's kind of cool. But he wakes up in this desert and in the midst of all this confusion, he sees a lantern. Not like a lantern, like an actual lantern, you know? And what's in the lantern, you might be thinking? Just the Joker's head. That's right. So Batman and Noggin, as he refers to it. Yeah, so this Joker has quips. It kind of feels like Shrek a little bit. Now hear me out. We have Batman just trying to figure this whole ordeal out, and he's just trying to figure out pieces along the way, and then we have this crazy sidekick who just loves to talk. The writers really amped it up in issue number 3 of The Last Night on Earth. So during the duo's travels, Joker mentions, in a jokingly manner of course, that he wanted to be Batman's next Robin. Could you imagine that? Well, yeah, you can because it happens. And it's awesome too. So basically you take this lantern Joker's head and mix it in with Tim Drake's mech Robin suit that he no longer needs, and bam, you have the new Robin. He's an actual sidekick in this too, like he almost dies trying to save Bruce from Omega. The Last Night on Earth. Go check it out right now. Well, after the video, but yeah. Number 9, Mr. Freeze. Making his debut back in Batman Volume 2, Issue 1, Mr. Freeze is an iconic Batman villain, and partially because I think the best actor in the world played him in Batman and Robin. That's right, I'm talking about our boy Arnold. Mr. Freeze's biology was altered after being bathed in chirochemicals, so his body heat is only that of 23 degrees Fahrenheit. So anything he touches will also freeze. Now, of course, this also slows his aging down drastically. He wears a Cairo suit to help keep his body temperature below freezing. That is, until a recent Detective Comics issue 1012. Nanotech saves the day. That's right, for years Mr. Freeze has been working with nanotech over and over again until finally he can now survive without the use of his helmet. I mean, as cool as the helmet did look, I think the main Avatar Blue Man Group kind of look suits him, you know? What do you guys think? Helmet? On? Off? I think off. Number 8, Scarecrow. Okay, this next one's for the nerds who also like to game out. Jonathan Crane, aka Scarecrow, is one of my favorite villains, hands down. After making his first appearance in World's Finest Comics, issue 3, and also portrayed by Cillian Murphy in the Nolan trilogy, Scarecrow is known to use fear as a main weapon, which is pretty sick. So we see this in Batman Begins, but we really see the full effects of where he can go mentally, specifically in the game Arkham Asylum. I mean, he's insanely scary and quite the big deal. He almost acted like Freddy Krueger in some ways. Like one minute you'll be walking around in the middle of a mission, maybe you're scanning something, and then all of a sudden the camera starts to change a bit, and then the game changes, and then all of a sudden you're in this crazy nightmare. And it's so smooth the way it happens that you get kind of concerned, someone who's actually playing it. I also love seeing this type of Scarecrow in a video game because it made me feel like I was part of it. Like literally I was part of the action. You feel like a detective in the entire game series, it's done so well, but then you also feel pretty scared when you're not sure of what what you're seeing is supposed to happen in the game. Some parts, I swear, my game was glitching. Amazing series if you haven't played it yet.
Number 7. Hydra Supreme. Hydra Supreme was the name Captain America took when he became evil. He only became evil, of course, because Kobik, the cosmic cube in the form of a little girl, altered reality to make him a secret sleeper agent for Hydra throughout his history. Reality was then changed so that every action Captain America, Steve Rogers, had taken up to this point was all part of a long con to take over the United States of America after gaining their trust implicitly before revealing his true colors. Fortunately, the original Captain America still existed within the cosmic cube, or the shards of it, and once released was able to fight against and defeat his evil alternate reality counterpart. Woohoo! But also not woohoo if you were a fan of Hydra Supreme.
Number 6. Killer Croc. AKA Waylon Jones, he made his first debut in Batman number 357. We saw him in Suicide Squad and he looked pretty bad. It's kind of like a dinosaur, or like the lizard from Amazing Spider-Man, whatever. We don't talk about that movie in here. We're talking about DC, we're not talking about them. So the introduction of his character in Suicide Squad actually got me pretty pumped. And then the rest of the movie happened, so short-lived to say the least. His OG look wasn't nearly as menacing though. I mean, see, from his debut back in 1983, he looked like a guy. A strange looking guy, but still more human than his current look nonetheless. Now at this point, he was just a criminal with a scaly skin disease, where now he looks like a monster, donning the full-on Croc monster look. And if you want to see these big changes for yourself, make sure you check out Batman Hush Killer Croc, where he looks arguably the most bad. There's one panel where he's just towering over Catwoman and he's like, I want my money! And she's like, alright man, chill out. I would my leather pants. Very fast.
Number 5. Black Winter. Black Winter was actually an old villain sort of made new and shiny again. Originally we came to know this cosmic evil constant as the Creeping Plague, although I do like the name Black Winter better than Creeping Plague. It was credited with being the entity responsible for the death of the cosmos prior to its rebirth when Galen was first transformed into the being known as Galactus. The Black Winter was meant to be this massive, unstoppable eldritch villain, though shortly after its full appearance in Thor issue number 4 from 2020, it was swiftly defeated 2 issues later. It's not so unstoppable. Though it did require the power of Galactus, which Thor wielded in order to destroy the Black Winter, getting a brief glimpse of his possibly perilous future in its last falling snowflake. So yeah, it did require a lot of power, I guess, to take it out, but still, it was only 2 issues. They were like, this thing, it's massive, and defeated, no probs. Oh yeah, the Black Winter is also kind of like an eldritch storm that basically erases the existence of all it comes into contact with, and it comes with bonus visions of your own destruction.
Number 4. Clayface. Basil Karlo, aka Clayface, made his first debut back in 1940 in Detective Comics numero 40. He was an actor that had gone a touch crazy when a remake of his classic movie was released with a new actor. Kind of like what we get to see every other month. So he decided to adopt this persona of an old movie villain, Clayface. And this guy's pretty neat. He can mimic anybody just by getting a smidgen of DNA. He can change the shape, the size of his body. Solid actor, eh? So method. Cut to Detective Comics Volume 1, Issue 934. Clayface had escaped Arkham Asylum. Why, you ask? To go to the movies. Yep, he went to go see himself on the big screen. To see himself. I don't watch myself really. I watch a few of these, but too scared. So as the crowd of moviegoers obviously runs out in a frenzy, Clayface is left sitting there wide-eyed, just wondering what could have been, watching his own performance. So Batman and Batgirl enter the theater, shocked that this is the reason he escaped. All he wants in this moment is just to watch the 84-minute movie and feel good again, to remind him who he was once. Batman responds with, well, what if I could give you more than that? What's the catch, he answers? Well, the catch is, says Batgirl, you're gonna have to do everything we say. And poof, we have Clayface on the home team. Let's go.
Number 3. Iska the Unbeaten. Iska is the sister of Genesis, and as such is Apocalypse's sister-in-law. She is a mutant from Morocco who's fighting against our mutant heroes of Krakoa in the Otherworld tournament, intended to settle their dispute as decided by Opal Luna Saturnine, the omniversal magistrates of the Starlight Citadel, as seen in the current X-Men event 10 of Swords. Iska's mutant power is an epic one. She can never be beaten. Krakoan mutants Magic and Cable, both set to testing her power prior to the tournament's start, had a great feast that was held the evening anything before, finding them to be quite impressive. They wondered what would happen if she were to face their lucky friend Domino, and Iska assured them that whoever this Domino was, she would certainly lose. And I gotta say, after seeing Iska go to work, I think I would agree Iska's gonna probably win in a fight against Domino. Let me know what you think about that.
Number 2, Catwoman. Making her first debut in Batman number 1, Selena Kyle looked a bit different from the start, to say the least. We've seen numerous actors play the iconic jewel thief, from Michelle Pfeiffer, or as I said growing up, Michelle Pfeiffer, to Zoe Kravitz, set to play her in the upcoming Batman flick with Pattinson. So we know the look by now. All black, slick, couple of quips, some eyebrow raises. She kicks. This look was never the case, however. In the first issue she appeared in, she was actually referred to as the Cat, simply put. And at this time, her outfit looked just a bit more lame, if I can say. She kind of looked like Doctor Strange in a weird way. The all yellow dress, the red cape, but the best part, she had a realistic fur mask. It wasn't until 1946 until her mask was changed to a more fitting look. Still not quite what we're used to, but it's a step in the right direction, that's for sure. Then in the 50s, she was deemed more of a sidekick to Batman rather than a villain. And finally, number 1, the Joker, Death of the Family. This next one is wild. And yes, the Joker was on this list more than once. Well, because I wrote it, okay? That's it. We go back to 2012, Batman Volume 2, Issue 13. Now, the Joker at this point had not been in Gotham City for about a year now. He originally got captured and sent to Arkham Asylum, but that was all part of his plan. So while he was in there, he made a meeting with Dollmaker, where they cut off Joker's face, and then the Joker escaped without a face. So a year later, the Joker returned to Gotham, still without a face, kills some cops, all Joker-like, still without a face, and then he steals his own face out of the evidence room, just slaps it on. He kind of has to tie it. It's really gross. Imagine looking around and then you just see your own face. That's it. So he masks up, or faces up, whatever you want to call it, and then he captures Alfred. Wild. The look of this mask though, oh, it's so loose and gross. It looks like baloney. You gotta love it.